Alright, what's going on, guys? Sal here. Back again. Wasn't expecting to do a video like this, but I decided to. This is going to be a breakdown of this 3-game slate. I did a first look lineup a few days back of this 3-game Thanksgiving slate. Now that I got to digest it a little bit, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, I don't know. Now that I got to digest it a little bit, I want to come back and just look position by position like I usually do for the main slate. Not going to be able to do that for the main slate this week because I'm going to be traveling later today, and then into Thursday's Thanksgiving, not really going to be doing anything work-wise for that. And then Friday, I'm going to be traveling back, so I don't have much time to kind of get a full breakdown of the slate for Sunday and really get you guys quality content for that one. But I will be looking into it possibly Saturday. I will get that out, but I'm not going to bank on it. But we'll be looking into this 3-game slate, breaking it down. And I'm going to use Draft Dashboard because I think it'll be a little easier to kind of keep track of all these plays that I like at each position. Draft Dashboard right now, if you guys are interested, it's a month for only $1. There's a link in the description below, so feel free to check that out. And we'll go through it and you can see what the tool's about, but really more so just getting you prepped more for this 3-game slate on Thanksgiving. There's a lot of action in play on DraftKings, and we can go to that really quick. If we go right to NFL, I showed a little bit of this on the first look lineup. If you haven't seen that, you can go check that out. And that first look lineup was more of a cash game build. This one I'm going to be going more for, I guess, tournaments. Also cash, but more so for tournaments to try and get a player pool together for that. Not necessarily giving you guys picks. These are just some guys that I find interesting, intriguing. I might not even play them, but there's just some interest that I have for them, whether it's based on injuries, opening some players up, or pricing, whatever it might be, as an interesting play for tournaments. But again, you can only get so many guys in those tournament lineups, and I'm not going to be playing a ton of tournament lineups on Thanksgiving just since it's so low. Basically, if you don't have one guy in a 3-game slate, you're going to be screwed, really, for the most part, unless it's a really low-owned guy. But as you can see here, Thursday's slates, aside from the Showdown slate, which is a video out for that as well, you can check that out. I mean, you have 200K in the Wishbone Classic, 150K if you want to play a little bit more expensive, higher stakes at 333. And then you even have some other, if we just break it down by total prize, you have a lot of things going on here. You have a 50K first case prize, standard payouts, a lot of things going on here, so I think it'd be important to get some action in play just because it'll be a fun thing to do. And also, yeah, fun while you're watching on Thanksgiving, and also you can win some money. And it's just good to stay sharp on your DFS skills, and it's a 3-game slate on Thanksgiving, so obviously why not play? So quarterback, I mean, there's only 6 teams playing. You're only going to have 6 quarterbacks. The big thing to note is that Mitch Trubisky's out, or at least he's doubtful, most likely not going to play. So we already have Colt McCoy starting, a backup quarterback starting. So now we're really limited at quarterback. And if we're going to be looking at this from a tournament perspective, like both of these guys are obviously going to be watch lists for me. They're in a 60-point total game, and whenever the total over-under is 59.5 or more, both quarterbacks fare well in those situations. Now, we do have Drew Brees on the side of being a 13-point favorite, so either way, I don't like playing quarterbacks, 1, in divisional matchups, or 2, when there's huge favorites, because for the team like the Falcons, it means that they're probably going to get blown out. Maybe there's not going to be a lot of good offense for them. And for the team like the Saints, it means that they could go run heavy. But there's a couple of things that I want to disclaim. Every single game on this slate's a divisional matchup, so you're choosing a quarterback in a divisional matchup, and I think they've all played each other one time. I know the Saints have played the Falcons one time. I know that Dallas and Washington has played one time. I believe that the Lions and Bears have. Maybe they have not. Maybe I'm mistaken on that. But it's still a divisional matchup, and when you go towards it, that's really... There's some things that stand out when you want to play quarterbacks in divisional matchups, especially if there's such a high point total, especially considering Matt Ryan here. Yes, he's a 13-point underdog, but that offense is still great. I think 13 points is a ton. I think a lot of public's going to be on the Saints just because they've seen what they've done the past couple of weeks, scoring 50 points, blowing out decent teams. In Atlanta, it would be another decent team, but I think that these teams know each other. It's a divisional matchup on Thanksgiving. It should be closer than that. But I think I'm going to watch those both quarterbacks because of that high total. Trubisky's out. Really, you could watch list every single quarterback in this, right? Like, I want to watch list Stafford because I don't think anybody's going to play Stafford. This tool doesn't even have the fact that, I mean, we can go to DraftKings right now, and we can just go one of these lineups. The fact that Mitch Trubisky's ruled out and you're going to have Chase Daniels going. I just want to see what his price is here. And I mean, that tool is like projecting for the starters, so that literally got called like 30 minutes ago, not even, I think. So you have Chase Daniels at $4,400, so he's a backup quarterback. He's priced like a backup quarterback. Is on these slates. I mean, he's a little bit less than Colt McCoy. He has a good matchup, though. So the thing that you want to put in when you're thinking about Chase Daniels, is that a guy that I want to go with in tournaments, play somebody who won't have as high ownership, nearly as high ownership as these two guys. Possibly the third highest ownership. I know nobody's going to play Colt McCoy. I feel like Dak's going to be higher owned than Stafford, which might be a mistake. In a game that Stafford should be in a close game. It's like a 3-point game right now. The line may move since Mitch Trubisky's out. It shouldn't move too much. But I think Stafford's going to be low owned in a game where he probably has the best, not best game environment, obviously, because this game's a higher over-under, but just a closer matchup in terms of spread. So there'll be more pass script for him, probably more so than a Drew Brees, more so than possibly a Chase Daniels, and I don't think most people want to play Colt McCoy. But Chase Daniels, again, he's in this offense where Matt Nagy is a great coach. It's kind of like a system offense, so I can see both sides. I'm kind of torn on it right now if I want to even own any of him or not. Because if you do own Chase Daniels, then you're saying that Matt Nagy is a great coach. This is a system where quarterbacks can flourish in. Mitch Trubisky, yes, he's obviously a higher talented quarterback based on where he was drafted. I mean, first round, high pick. All of that, and yes, he does have rushing upside, but somebody like Chase Daniels, who's a veteran, completing 65% of his passes in the NFL, is somebody who could flourish in this situation, especially going up against a really soft defense. Or you can go on the flip side of that, and you could say Mitch Trubisky is a far better player than him, far better athlete, has rushing upside in this offense. Now they're going to probably lean on Jordan Howard a little bit more, which they probably will either way a little bit more. Maybe dump off to Tariq Cohen, and it's going to be really a low ADOT, low yards per attempt, which has been Chase Daniels' whole career. He's only had 78 attempts. He's completing 65% of those attempts, but he's only averaging, I think, like 5.1, 5.7 yards per completion, and that's really low compared to a Mitch Trubisky who's averaging like 7.7, a whole 2 yards difference in his short career. So I think Chase Daniels is interesting because of his matchup. Obviously, because of his price, you could fit some other things in there. Because of his ownership, it's most likely going to be really low. Just don't know if I want to go there. The thing that I will say, though, is that I do like Matt Stafford a lot at home in a game that's, I mean, he's flourished on Thanksgiving year after year. We've seen it. And he's at home now, and his team's going to have a little less pressure, maybe, if this game stays how close as it should based on the spread, to kind of compete in this game and win the game. At home on Thanksgiving, like I said, there's extra motivation. And I think if you take a Drew Brees or a Matt Ryan in cash, it's obviously probably the smartest move to take either of these. In tournaments, though, I think Drew Brees, yeah, he's a solid play. He's going at home. But it's just interesting to me that if you're going to take Drew Brees at home and say he does go for 25 points, that's not going to win you the tournament. Like, you still need everything else to pan out for you. You might score a little higher, place a little higher, possibly hit the cash line because of Drew Brees. But in most situations, quarterbacks don't make or break you, I would say. Or maybe they don't make or break you as much as position players do, because they can break you if they get you like 5 points, like possibly Colt McCoy can. But I do like the option of playing Matthew Stafford, who, yes, he's not ranked high on here, but again, in tournaments, he could be a guy who, or even Chase Daniels, because you can see Mitch Trubisky's numbers here. Mitch Trubisky's not the same player, of course, but he does have a great matchup, as you can see right here, and a great matchup against the pass. I think that in tournaments, if somebody like a Dak or a Matt Stafford can get you 20 points, not even 30 like a Brees or Ryan can, and that allows you to spend up in some other places because you have an extra $1,000 or whatever you might have, I think it's worth it, especially for Matt Stafford, who's somebody who can go for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, especially with Kerryon Johnson being out. They're not going to lean on LeGarrette Blount. They're probably not going to give the whole workload to Theo Riddick. Maybe Zach Zanner gets some. I know there's some talk about that. I think it's a tricky situation, sneaky situation. If Chase Daniels was on here, I'd put him in there too. Dak and Colt McCoy, I really don't want to touch that game, and maybe that means there'll be a lot of value in that game ownership-wise, but I really don't want to touch it from a quarterback perspective. Let's move on to some more positions where we have some more depth. So going to running back now. We'll break it up by salary, and I think that right here it's going to be we're on FanDuel right now, so I've been on FanDuel this whole time for the quarterbacks. So still same thing for quarterbacks, though. I still like the same quarterbacks that I said. We just got to go back to this 3-game slate now. And you could filter this any way you want. You could filter it for the showdown slates. If you go single game, you could filter it for any of the other slates that DraftKings or FanDuel provides. So yeah, now we have all those quarterbacks there. Again, Chase Daniels not in this yet, just because that news just came out, so he's not in anybody's really projection systems like this. Watching players, Alvin Kamara, we saw in my first look, I like stacking both Saints. Basically, that's saying that you think the Saints are going to do what this score says and win by 2 touchdowns. And in that case, I do like Mark Ingram, who I think will be somebody who goes low owned based on his price being the second most expensive, or the third most expensive running back on the slate outside of Zeke, outside of Kamara. On such a short game slate, yes, I don't want to play Zeke in a lot of tournaments, but I think it's smart to obviously have him as the guy who's going to be getting, in a game where his team's favored by 7.5 points on some sites, a guy who's going to be getting a guaranteed 20 touches in that situation, getting all the goal line work, getting the passing game work. I think that this is a great spot for Zeke against a pretty tough defense, as you can see here. Top 10, they're top 6 in DVOA against the rush, and they stopped Zeke the last time out. But again, with limited options at the running back position, only having really one other elite running back in Kamara on the slate, it makes for a situation where if Zeke goes for another 30-point game, then you're obviously sitting pretty. And then really, if you don't have Zeke, you're kind of in trouble because there's not a lot of people on this slate who can go for a 30-point game outside of probably Zeke, Kamara, and Julio Michael Thomas, right? Or realistically, kind of. Tariq Cohen, I wasn't on Tariq Cohen until this Chase Daniels news came out. I'm still not totally sold on Tariq Cohen because he's not going to get a bunch of the workload. That's going to be Jordan Howard in the rushing game. He's really receiver dependent. So he's touchdown dependent in the receiving game unless he breaks off like a 50-yard reception, which he's very capable of doing. We mentioned Chase Daniels' attempts or his completions are very low ADOT or very low yards per completion. That means lots of passes to the running back, lots of passes short across the middle. Possibly could help some guys like Trey Burton, who does run intermediate routes, so maybe more so Taylor Gabriel coming out of the slot. I'm going to watch Cohen. Like I said, I do like Tevin Coleman. And this is just tournament only, right? I did put him in some of my first look lineups at points, but now that I analyzed it, digested it more, shout out Thanksgiving, he's a 13-point underdog in this game. And again, I don't see a divisional game on Thanksgiving with two great offenses that the game went into overtime. Atlanta should have won the first game if Drew Brees actually got tackled instead of running it in to force overtime. I think they win that game. So I think Tevin Coleman, as a guy who's going to get receiving work, he's had 5 targets. I believe, is it 3 straight weeks now since their bye? And we could check his full stats here. So points, snaps, salary, yards per point. That's actually, dollars per point is actually really interesting here. We can go over to DraftKings to check his targets since the bye. I know he had 5, at least 5 the past 2. All right, so he had 7, 5, and 3. So he's at his most targets in these past 3 weeks than he has all year in a 3-week span coming off of the bye against New Orleans, who, I mean, they're giving up short intermediate passes to basically every slot receiver and running back. But on the flip side of that, we know how bad Atlanta is against running backs. That's why I watched both of these players that we've already watched from the Saints backfield in Kamara and Ingram. So I'm definitely going to watch Coleman because I think he will be low owned, as he probably should be due to being such a high underdog as a running back, which again, you're not going to see a lot of run if you're trailing the whole game. It's going to be more pass script. Benefit that Matt Ryan, benefit Julio Jones, benefit Calvin Ridley, Austin Hooper, all those guys. So we will watch Tevin Coleman, but not totally on him. I'm not going to be on Adrian Peterson. I've mentioned it in videos before. I've gotten some backlash a little bit about this. But Adrian Peterson, especially as a 7-point underdog, he's a one-trick pony, right? He's a guy who's going to go right up the middle. Maybe he'll hit one cut and go to the left like you saw in his touchdown the past week. The one thing I will say is that Adrian Peterson has great games when nobody expects him to, like on the road against Dallas as a 7-point underdog with a decent defense going up against. And he has bad games when everybody expects him to have a good matchup, right? So monitor Chris Thompson. Doesn't seem like he's going to play with his ribs still. He hasn't practiced in almost like a month now. So even if he gets a limited practice, I don't really feel great about that. But Adrian Peterson as an underdog in a game where he has his backup quarterback in, so even load up the box a little bit more against Adrian Peterson, who's a guy who really has to get you a touchdown and 100 yards to have a great game. At his price, though, it's a little bit easier now because, again, he's 5,100. So in the NFL on DraftKings, 3xing your value, so 5,100. So that would be 15.3 points you need out of him for him to hit value for you. If you do that at all your lineup positions, you will cash, or you should cash, unless everybody's doing great as well. So 15.3 points, you only need 90 yards and a touchdown out of him, and he's a guy who can go for 2 touchdowns any game. So I do say maybe there's some value at that price, but again, as an underdog on the road, in this situation where he's basically an up-the-middle runner against a tough defense, I don't really want to touch it. Theo Riddick, I know that LeGarrette Blount's awful, and we have LeGarrette Blount at 3,400, but Theo Riddick, I don't want to play him in cash, and I don't want to play him in tournaments. He's been great on Thanksgiving. That's the only thing I will say about him, but Bruce Ellington ran 21 routes out of the slot, and Theo Riddick only had 3. So if Theo Riddick's going to be coming out of the backfield, I don't love it too much in a game where really they should stay in a run script, so LeGarrette Blount probably will get some work. And the other guy who probably will get some work is Zach Zeiner. So Zach Zeiner, awful like everything on here, and that makes sense because he's really only been working on special teams this year. But if you remember a few years back, he had multiple touchdowns. He was breaking off runs on the one primetime game. They might get him the work because he's the closest thing to Kerryon Johnson that they have now that LeGarrette Blount is absolutely awful. Again, 16 yards on 21 carries the last 3 or 4 weeks. Just absolutely terrible, like literally 0.7 yards a carry. It's really bad. Nobody else down here, though. So I'll watch list Zeiner, and this is only tournament dart throw, right? This is only tournaments. There's only like a showdown slate for a guy who's going to be super cheap in the showdown slate. And there's 3 showdown slates this week, so definitely get involved. Nobody else. So Capri Bibbs, I don't really want. Yes, he has a couple of touchdowns on the year, but he gets like 2 carries a game, and even in tournaments, I don't want that because at most he'll get you like, what, 6-7 points. Which Zeiner, yes, maybe he'll only get you 6 or 7 points, but there's also the opportunity that they say, you know what, Blunt, you're doing terrible for us. We're going to give this kid 12 to 15 touches, and in that case, I don't mind it. But again, this is like the tournament dart throw at running back that I see. Other than that, that's really all I'm looking at. I'm looking at only a handful of running backs. The high-priced guys, really all the high-priced guys are in play for me. Like I said, the top 4 or 5 salary guys are all in play. And then really just skipping over some of these other names in here. I think Riddick will have some high ownership. I think, actually, now that I look at it, Jordan Howard I want to watch as well. So really, I'm just avoiding the Detroit backfield and the Redskins backfield, and then I'm looking at all the other backfields in this game, right? And these are watch list players, so they're going to go into this watch list, as you can see over here, and once they go into there, then from there you can line up optimize, you can narrow the field. So it's just guys that I would definitely consider playing, even if it's a little bit like Zach Zeiner, right? Let's go over to wide receiver, and at the end of this, I'll kind of just show you the optimizer, see some lineups we could build from the pool that we're creating here. So Julio is a guy I'm going to watch. Obviously, so I'm going to watch Michael Thomas, right? I'm going to click watch on him right now, but I'm going to play him a lot less than I am a guy like Julio Jones, right? And again, all these guys can be watch listed. Like, I'll filter by salary. Like, all these guys, Galladay's great watch list. I'm not going to watch list Cooper. And again, he's coming off an awful week, and his career has basically been good week, bad week, good week, bad week. So this is the week, would be the week to target him. But I just don't want to touch it. Allen Robinson I was high on, especially because he didn't do as great last week. I like to target veterans who are coming off bad weeks or stretches of bad weeks, like I did Mike Evans and Jordan Reed this past week, like I did Allen Robinson, LaShawn McCoy the week before that. It opens up a lot of value. But now with Daniels out there and Allen Robinson, yeah, he comes out of the slot. He catches intermediate passes. But his big game is going down the field, catching 30-yard touchdowns, things like that. That's how his career has always been. He's a tall wide receiver who can catch the jump ball. Not sure I want to target him this week, and I believe that can give you an opportunity to differentiate yourself. I just don't see it. So what I was saying was I want to target these 3 guys, right? They're all great. I want to target Julio more because the way that I see this slate going is that the first game is going to garner, it was going to garner a lot of ownership until we got this Chase Daniels news, right? A lot of people are going to be on a lot of the Bears. A lot of people are going to be on a decent amount of the Lions. Really probably just Lions D maybe. People are going to try and get cute with maybe Riddick. And then Galladay was going to take up a ton of the ownership, one of the highest owned players on the slate, probably due to his price and his production and his target share that he's going to get. Marvin Jones has been ruled out. And then on the Bears side, you have both running backs being viable. But more so, people are going to be looking at the Taylor Gabriels at a cheap price, Anthony Miller at a cheap price, and then Trubisky, who is going to probably be lower owned, but still has the probably highest upside due to his legs out of all the quarterbacks on the slate. But now, I think it's going to be more so, I mentioned in the first game how I thought a lot of people were going to play the first 2 games, or the first look video, play the first 2 games, and that last game you could hammer home with the highest total, one of the highest totals of the year, one of the best potential matchups, 2 of the top 6 offenses of the year going at it. The first time they scored, whatever they scored, like 70 points. So, yeah, I think that that's still going to be a good way to go about this. However, I think a lot more people are going to target it now with the Mitch Trubisky news being out, hurting a lot of the Chicago offense. You would expect, I don't think it'll hurt it that much, but you would expect. So I'm not going to watch Liz Cooper. He's just a guy who's going up against a pretty bad secondary, yes. And maybe now that I'm talking about this more out loud that I will watch list him, but same situation. I don't want to play a lot of him. Like, if I'm making 10 lineups, probably 2 tops with Cooper. Michael Thomas is the same way. Like, I want to differentiate myself. If I'm playing cash, I'm going to try and get Michael Thomas in there because he has the highest floor based on the amount of targets he gets and the percentage that he converts into his historically high right now, the highest percentage of actually converting your targets into receptions. But my guys that I'm going to focus on are Julio Jones and Kenny Galladay. to build a lot of my tournament and cash game lineups around. I think Julio is going to garner a lot less ownership because Michael Thomas is just barely a little bit more expensive than him, and then a lot of people are going to try and go mid-range with just getting Kenny Golladay and Amari Cooper, maybe stacking up on running backs. I'm going to stay away from Allen Robinson. Really, a lot of these Bears wide receivers have come off the board for me. I loved Anthony Miller. I liked a lot of what I was seeing out of Taylor Gabriel in his pass game, catching a lot of short passes, and I thought that was going to be another good thing to exploit against this bad Detroit secondary and really overall defense. So now those are kind of out of play for me. I'm going to skip over, obviously Marvin Jones is hurt. Calvin Ridley, I'm going to watch list him because he's going up again. He had his best game of the year, best game probably of his career that he'll have. Against the Saints, he went for and we can look at it here. Yeah, I know he had the 3 touchdowns that game when he was priced at 3,700. I think he had like 150 yards, 146 yards, 7 catches, 8 balls, 3 touchdowns. So super efficient with what he was doing. He's never going to repeat that. I mean, he can, but it's very unlikely that he repeats that. Great price for him. I think he's going to be super low owned because he comes in at a price range where really, why wouldn't you take Amari Cooper or even Allen Robinson over Calvin Ridley, who hasn't been producing? And now this kind of matches up with me saying that I like to get guys who have been underproducing, who are veterans, right? Calvin Ridley, obviously a rookie, so it's not as concrete, not as safe. I don't like it, but I like that he's been underperforming, even though he's really great at running routes, catching touchdowns, all these things. He's targeted in the red zone plenty. He's been targeted overall in the season a lot in terms of usually what rookie wide receivers get in that Falcons offense. So I think Calvin Ridley is a sneaky play. Marvin Jones is out. Tre'Quan Smith, I'm glossing right over. I think he's going to have too high ownership. I think it's going to be, based on what he did last week, in the mid-20s. He's dealing with an injury too, so we don't know on a short week if he'll even get the full run. Mohamed Sanu, I mentioned whenever there's a game that has a 50-point total or more for Atlanta, Mohamed Sanu is averaging 15 points in his career on fantasy. This is a 60-point total, so I think he's definitely in play to watch. Anthony Miller, love Anthony Miller. He's catching touchdowns. He said he would catch 8 touchdowns this year as a rookie. He's already on pace for that with 5. His projections were like 3, so he's blowing that out the water already. He's very cheap. He's a guy that I did like until Trubisky got hurt. You have no idea where this ball is going to go now, right? I would imagine that it's going to be checkdowns to Cohen. It's going to be short passes to the slot, where Anthony Miller has been a decent amount in the slot. But I think Taylor Gabriel might be the safer bet there as he runs a lot shorter routes, average depth per target, A-dot routes. So Miller has a great matchup like this, but it's not taking into account his new quarterback. I'm going to be off of Miller, although I think he's dynamic, and off of him in terms of if I make 10 lineups, I'll probably have him in 1, 2 tops. So similar to Amari. So now, I mean, I'm taking Amari out of this. Just to kind of give us a better, more concise field. But again, I probably will have him in 1 or 2 lineups if I make 10, so 10%. Same thing with Miller. Cole Beasley, I do like. You can attack this Washington secondary for sure. And again, I don't want to play Cooper just because I think he's inconsistent. I think there's still some chemistry issues there. But Cole Beasley is the guy who can score 2 touchdowns, right? Like, we've seen him get so many red zone targets. He's a top 10 receiver the past 5 years in red zone targets, believe it or not. And that's Cole Beasley himself. So I believe short A-dot. He has a great matchup in the slot. I think Cole Beasley's definitely in play at 4,200. I think he'll garner some ownership, but not a ton. Josh Doctson, I mentioned, he saw the most targets once Colt McCoy came into the game with 5. Although he has a much harder matchup, probably going to get Byron Jones treatment in this game. I don't want to touch it. I really don't want to touch anybody on the Redskins, and that's where value is going to open up because, you know, somebody in the tournaments are going to have a lot of Redskins. There's going to be a lot of people with Redskins players, right? Especially the people who are entering max lineups. They're going to even have Colt McCoy with the whole entire offense, Adrian Peterson. I'm just staying away because NFC East divisional matchup, second time. A lot of the times, and the Cowboys are favored by 7, but they haven't covered a spread at home in the last 7 games. Every single game under Jason Garrett, they haven't covered it by an average of 10.4 points. That's absolutely ridiculous. I want to stay away from that game because I could see it being like a 13-10 game, and you're not getting much value anywhere in that game then, especially with that hammer game at night. I'm going to put Taylor Gabriel on here because, like I mentioned, he should be seeing a lot of these low A-dot targets. Yes, I also believe Terry Cohen can, and yes, Anthony Miller can. I think Taylor Gabriel gets the low A-dot targets, but he also goes deep and he gets involved on gadget plays like end arounds, things like that, usually an end around with Taylor Gabriel is going to get you 10 yards, right? And if he breaks one, like Miles also did a few years ago for the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, then you're really hitting value at this price. Trey Quinn, probably the only wide receiver or any really offensive weapon I would touch on the Redskins. He saw 4 targets, caught them all for 40 yards, and he should be seeing low A-dot targets from Colt McCoy. In the slot, he should be seeing a lot more run with Crowder out. Seemed like a guy was getting on the field. The 3rd most snaps he ran, right behind Josh Doctson and Jordan Reed. we can watch list him since he's super cheap. Keith Kirkwood, I like a lot. Like I said, Brandon Marshall's probably not expected to play this week, and I really do like what Keith Kirkwood, what I saw of him in that last game. Only 5 targets, 3 catches. Just missed out on having a touchdown. Drew Brees overthrew him on another pass, so he had a really good game. And now it looks like Traquan Smith's a little hampered with injury. He's probably going to play, but I do like Kirkwood. Ellington, we put out in that last game, or the first look lineup, we put out how he had 9 targets, ran the second most routes, right behind Kenny Golladay in targets for the Lions. I think he's a great play, right, in the slot, and he's super cheap. There's just a lot of value on this slate. Nothing down here that I really want to touch. Yeah, I don't want to touch anything this far down. Dan Arnold, I know that there's some people saying that he's getting some looks out there, but not anything that I want to touch. And again, we're building a pretty big watch list here, right? We're going to end up with like 12 to 14 players, but I think that's pretty good actually for a 3-game slate. Tight ends, Trey Burton's popping on almost every single thing that I've been seeing. Definitely has the best matchup, as you can see here. Fantasy Labs also says that he has the best matchup. I'm big on Trey Burton, even with Chase Daniels in there, because I think that Trey Burton, nobody's going to want to own him at his price since Hooper is only $4,200 more, which I like Hooper, which I like Jordan Reed. Like, basically the tight ends that are decent are in play here. But Burton's the one that I'm targeting the most in my lineups, and it's because he is the cheapest 1-1, and I think he's going to be the lowest owned tight end out of this core of 3, possibly even with Benjamin Watson out there because people are going to try and save money. I think he's going to be the lowest owned tight end with the most upside. Still a red zone threat. Yes, he hasn't been involved as much the past few weeks, but that's exactly what I want. I want a veteran. Yeah, he's still a young guy, second, third year, but he's still a veteran who's been struggling or not seeing as much looks in the past few weeks. He's probably going to garner less than 10% ownership, maybe very low ownership. Everybody wants Hooper, and again, I'm going to have a lot of Hooper. If I make 10 lineups, probably 5 lineups Hooper, and then I'll split up 3 with him, 2 with Reed. You know how it goes, right? But I like Trey Burton a lot, right? So that's really it for tight end. I mean, I know that people are going to try and get cute and find out which Dallas tight end is going to do something, and most likely one of them is going to do something, probably catch a tight end. I like Rico Gathers the most, but we have seen Dalton Schultz catch like 2 or 3 balls in games without Jeff Swaim so far this year. I just don't want to get cute and go down there. I think that's a really big punt play. Vernon Davis, I also think is too much of a punt play, especially since we've seen Jordan Reed running every single route almost now since he's been out there the past few weeks and getting just a ton of targets, double-digit targets in 2 out of 4 weeks. That's really it. I mean, if we want to talk about defense since it's such a short slate, we can. Like I mentioned, I do like the Dallas defense a lot. But now a lot of things get interesting. With Chase Daniels going out there, I think it puts the Lions defense in play. If you want to go correlation with the Dallas defense and Zeke, I think that's a great way to go because you're paying up a defense. It's naturally going to differentiate you from the Bears, who I think the Bears, as you can see, they have the best matchup on the slate. I think the Bears are going to be the most owned defense by far. I think they're going to be owned that 40 to 50% clip, and that's nuts, but nobody's going to want to own these 2 defenses, right? Now with the injury news in Chicago, maybe this Bears defense comes down maybe to like 35% because some people are going to play the Lions. Now that it's viable against a backup QB, they got a cheap price. It makes a little bit of sense, right? But for 500 more, you can still play the Bears. Redskins, I think, are going to be the one that might go the least owned because nobody wants to play these guys yet, but they're the cheapest defenses on here. So if you're going to save money, just go there. Redskins are going to be looked over. I think that they have some value there, especially if you think that they could hang in this game and AP does well. Pairing them with AP is definitely a good correlation move. But I think the Cowboys are by far still my favorite defense on the slate against a backup quarterback at home. They're favored by a good amount, so that means the quarterback's probably going to have to throw. Backup quarterback's very susceptible to making mistakes. And the Cowboys have a pretty solid defense, a top 10 defense on the year. Great secondary so far this year, and they get pressure on the quarterback, so I like the Cowboys defense. Obviously, the Bears are the best play, but when you take ownership, they're the best play in a nutshell when you're only considering these plays. But when you're taking ownership into account, I think the Cowboys are the way to go. If you're going cash games, then Bears, but I think still the Cowboys are still viable in that situation. So that's just a quick rundown at this. Now, if we go over to this watch list players over here, and then we can show you what we can do from there. So we managed to throw, 23 players in this pool right now. I mean, I'm basically throwing the entire slate on here, right? I mean, I skipped over some running backs, some wide receivers. But you can only fit like 9 guys in a lineup, so I think 23 is fair. I think getting it closer down. If we wanted to make it, so let's make it more concise. Now that we have the guys in the watch list, let's try and make it more concise. I'll leave the 3 tight ends on here. Actually, let's take out Jordan Reed. I'll take out Jordan Reed just because he's the highest priced tight end. He's just coming off a great week. There might be higher ownership on him, and he has a backup quarterback in there who did look his way a decent amount. Threw him a touchdown, so there's upside there. But we'll focus on these 2 tight ends the most. I want to keep Ridley in there. At cheap option, I think Bruce Ellington, based on his targets. So here's the thing that I'll say. Based on Bruce Ellington's targets of 9, his production catching like 6 balls for however many yards, 50, 60 yards, and the routes that he ran, I think a lot of people, and his price at $3,200, basically stone cold floor price, I think a lot of people are going to be on him. I think Bruce Ellington, on this entire slate, the highest owned player, might be Bruce Ellington because of what he did last game. People are going to see that, game log watchers, casual players, and say, wow, he's great value at $3,200. How is he so cheap? Yes, he is great value still. Like if he's running all of his routes out of the slot, I think he is. But we'll condense him down if we have to condense him down again. All these players that made it to this point, I'm going to keep in my lineups at some way, somehow, most likely. But I like Kirkwood off of Ellington. If Ellington's going to be 20% owned or more, which I find him on a short slate being more than that, ownership's hard to predict on these short slates, but at his price, he's going to be more than that in my opinion. I want to fade the really cheap, highest owned receiver at the cheapest price. And that's, I think, what Ellington is. So if we just, now we refresh this to get those guys out of there. I think at the cheap price, I like Trey Quinn and I like Kirkwood. I like Kirkwood more because Drew Brees is his quarterback. He has just a better matchup against Atlanta. And Trey Quinn I'm only keeping in here because he's another cheap pivot off of a guy like Ellington, who, if Ellington beats you and he goes for 15 points, which is probably really all that he can really do unless he gets 2 touchdowns. If he gets you 50 yards on 5 catches and a touchdown, he's getting you 16 points there. You're not going to win the tournament because you didn't have him, right? So you kind of just say, okay, I don't have him, oh well. And a guy like Kirkwood can run back at the night game and do the same exact thing, and you'd be fine at the same exact price, right? At lower ownership. But if Ellington does go off and you have him and 50% of the field has him, you really need a lot more things to fall your way. Yeah, you're going to lose if you don't have him and he goes off, but you're probably not going to win even if he does, just based on how hard tournaments are on these shorter game slates. You have to have every single player that goes off. I like Kirkwood, keeping him in there. I like all the quarterbacks that we put in here, including Chase Daniels, like I mentioned. Zeke I'm going to keep in here, but again, I'll say on Zeke, he has a tough matchup. Yes, he's at home. Yes, he's a 7-point favorite. But the only thing Washington's going to focus on is stopping the run. Yes, Amari Cooper is somebody to game plan for that they didn't have the first game against Washington, so that might help Zeke. Yes, Zeke catches the ball. I like Zeke. Like, I'm going to play him in cash, right? Most likely going to play him in cash based on lineup construction. But I think in tournaments, he's a smarter fade, as he'll probably be the most owned running back on the slate. So that's just one way to go. Trey Quinn we like. We like Matt Stafford. I like Matt Stafford as a tournament throw to get away from the other guys because he's the guy who can get you the 25 points that Breeze and Ryan will probably get you. But in that same way, you're going to save $1,000+, right? So I like Stafford. Like Mike Ryan, like I just said, $800 savings if you go off of him to Matt Stafford. Kamara, I think, is the best play on the entire slate. I think him being cheaper than Zeke is great for a lot of other people. Or for the rest of us, because we get to save a little bit of money and get a guy who's in a better game environment, who's coming off of a little bit of a down week for Kamara, so maybe some people try to fade him, go Zeke and Mark Ingram. But based on that point total, based on the way that Atlanta plays against running backs, I think it's a no-brainer to go Kamara, and probably Kamara and Ingram based on the spread being so high. Ingram should get some more run. We're going to keep Cohen in there for the low A-dot targets. Actually, you know what? We're going to take Cohen out if we really want to condense this and get down to 20 even. And we're going to keep Jordan Howard in there because I think Jordan Howard gets 15 to 20 touches, and he's a guy who's going to be around the goal line. We've seen him get 2 touchdowns a couple times this year, and he's going up against an awful run defense. Yes, Damian Snacks Harrison is out there, but things haven't changed. They've changed a little bit. Like, it's much improved when Harrison is out there based on when he's not, because he's one of the best run stoppers in the league. But it's not enough to where you're like, okay, I'm not going to play any of these running backs against the Lions anymore. Like, no, they're still getting theirs against the Lions. So we can take Zach Zeiner out. Again, I'll mention he's literally the dart throw, right? He's a dart throw, probably more so not in full game slates, but in these single game showdowns where if you get a guy for super cheap, like we could check how much Zeiner is going to be in the single game showdown. I haven't even looked at these other showdowns outside of the night one. I'm going to probably play a good amount of them. Like, I think there's a 20K prize for the early game, and then the 4 o'clock game, there's like a 50K prize. So if we go showdown slate here, and we see they put a couple other ones on there. I think Zeiner's probably going to be like less than $1,000. I can't see him being much more than that. $1,000, right? Right on the spot. And again, he hasn't played like at all. He had 1 carry for 12 yards on the year. He's been a lot on special teams. But if you need a dart throw, I think he's worth it. I think he's a little expensive at $1,000. Honestly, I thought he'd be around $600 to $200 since he hasn't had any work outside of special teams. But based on Kerryon being out, it makes a little sense. We can reload that again. Now we're down to 19. I think this is a little more manageable. I do like Gabriel. I do like Sanu based on the totals. Like, we have all 3 Falcons wide receivers for a reason. because they're going up against a terrible defense, and we have 2 Saints wide receivers for a reason because they're going up against a terrible defense, right? Wide receivers usually would set you apart in showdown slates, so make sure you get some of these guys in there as opposed to running backs, just because wide receivers, PPR, point per reception, and they're going to be getting better chances at the red zone since they can, or at the end zone since they can score from anywhere on the field. Yes, running backs can too, but it's much more likely for a wide receiver to score from 40 yards out than a running back. Galladay I love. I think Cole Beasley's a great play at his price. Like we already mentioned Gabriel. I like. These 2 guys are really going to be, I think, where the slate is. Like, Thomas is going to get more ownership based on him being just Michael Thomas having an incredible year. And Jones has been having a down year because of his touchdowns. Now that he has touchdowns, I can see his ownership going up. Down year in terms of ownership, right, in bigger tournaments. But, I mean, Thomas might be 50% owned. Jones might be 35%. So you're saving a good amount of ownership here and some money. So I think a good fade option in tournaments would be going Matt Ryan, Tevin Coleman, Julio Jones, like building a lineup like that if you want to get away from Drew Brees, Kamara, Michael Thomas, expensive type stack. But yeah, so we have our watch players, and then if we go over to lineup optimizer here, and you can do some of these other tools, play around with them. Like I said, it's only $1 for 30 days, so play around with them if you want. If you have the $1 to spare, if not, then no worries. It's in the description below. You can click that link. But this is what we could do, right? It just optimizes us a lineup here, and you get Drew Brees with Kamara. I think that's pretty solid. You get Michael Thomas, is that lineup we just talked about being highly owned. This is a pretty solid lineup, right? I mean, Jordan Howard's a guy, like we said, now that Daniels is out, that can do some stuff. I like Trey Burton the most this week. Galladay's going to get all the targets out there. We said Mohamed Sanu is great in high totals. He usually finds his way into the end zone or gets you close to 100 yards, closer to 80 yards. He's not a 100-yard receiver. And Beasley's a sneaky guy. So, like, I'm going to screenshot this lineup just because I think this is a pretty good lineup for a first build. And that's what you're going to get from an optimizer. It's going to give you things that you've never seen before based on projections, the ranks, the opponents, things like that. So now if we wanted to lock Trey Burton into the tight end spot, you can do things like that and you can randomize it again. We can see Trey Burton stays in the lock spot, and now we have a different lineup. So now you get both the Saints running backs and Drew Brees, which probably isn't the best correlation, but again, last week it would have been fine for you. You still get Sanu, you get Ridley, so you're fading basically every other game, right? You're getting the 3 wide receivers, which this is definitely a differentiated lineup. I like this as well. You're going to get the 3 wide receivers in a game where they're going to be passing a lot. Maybe you put Matt Ryan here instead. You get the 3 wide receivers. You get the 2 Saints running backs. If it's going to be a big 10-point lead for the Saints, they're going to run the ball a little bit more with Ingram. Kamara is game flow independent, but he'll get some rushes. And then if you put somebody like Matty Ice here, so if we were to lock in this entire lineup, I like Gabriel at his price. Redskins D, I said, is a little bit interesting, but let's make that lineup quick. So, let's not make the lineup. But I was going to say, we make the same exact lineup. You put Matt Ryan here. It saves you a good amount of money. It saves you $600. You can come up at defense to the Cowboys defense, right? Or to the Bears defense if you want. So, like, optimizing, using an optimizer like this, I think is pretty valuable. We just locked that whole lineup in, so that's why you're not seeing much change anywhere else. Eventually, you'll see the quarterback change, but it's just not changing right now, and it's because it loves Drew Brees that much. Like, optimizers will put a player that they love a lot, like Drew Brees, in a lot of their lineups. So if you ran this 100 times, you'd probably get Drew Brees like 70% of the time because he's just that good of a play. But that's just the way that this tool works. It's just the way that we could look at finding lineups, thinking about things that we probably wouldn't look at, like 3 wide receivers from the Falcons, right? Nobody's really going to think about that, but Matt Ryan's in a position to throw for 400 yards, and if he does that, you would imagine that these 3 guys should have a decent game each. So yeah, I think that's the way that I break down this slate. I think that it's going to be a fun slate. Thanksgiving, I think it's a good day to just kind of relax, enjoy it. I just wanted to come out and break this down since I won't be able to break down most likely won't be able to break down the full slate Monday due to the holiday week. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you made it this far and you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button, right? We hit over 500 subscribers. I'm going to come out with a video probably Saturday once I get back to school. A little giveaway video for that. So stay tuned for that. Hit that like button and comment below what you guys are thinking on this slate. Check out the first look. Check out the showdown slate. First look for both Thanksgiving and the full week that we already put out on Monday. Appreciate it, guys. My name's Sal. Best of luck. Have a happy holiday. Peace.